Okay, great. Hello, everyone. So my name is Trevor Coleman, and this is Jay Vidyarthi, and we're from Interaxon, makers of Muse, the Brain Sensing Headband. So what we're going to do in this talk is first I'll just tell you a little bit about sort of the history of our company, where we come from, and then we'll show you a video about how the product works, or how we design the product, and then Jay will tell you some of the things we learned while we do that, some of the exercises we came up with, stuff like that. So Interaxon's a company that started in 2007. My co-founders, Ariel and Chris, worked with Dr. Steve Mann at U of T, who's the inventor of the wearable computer. And so they had found this cool technology that let us read people's brainwaves and do stuff with them. And so at first, we just started doing the coolest things we could think of. So the first thing we did was this project here, which was at the Olympics in Vancouver. We allowed people using their brainwaves to control the lights on the CN Tower in Toronto, the Canadian Parliament buildings in Niagara Falls. So in real time from Vancouver, as people relaxed or focused, that would change the light patterns on those sites. We had over 17,000 people do it over the 7 days, and it was just a really magical experience. After that, we kind of went into consulting and did just more cool things. So like this is the 5-gum chew-off. So this is a sampling campaign for 5-gum where we detect the muscle activity in people's jaw muscles using our same headbands. And as people chewed gum, the fruits would swell and explode, and whoever blasted theirs first would get a free packet of 5-gum. But as we were doing this, we sort of felt a little bit unsatisfied, I guess, with what we were able to create. Like, they're very cool things. It was a lot of fun. But the problem was that, it wasn't really delivering a lot of value, I think. Like, when we looked at the control stuff, brain control things are pretty fuzzy. It takes about 1 second to 2 seconds to make something happen, and there's not like a lot of precision in it. And no one's going to replace their keyboard and mouse with a brain sensor anytime soon. But what we started to see was that there's a tremendous power in this technology to be able to tell people something about themselves they didn't know. So that's why we started working on Muse, the Brain Sensing Headband. And so with this product, it's a headband that connects wirelessly to your smartphone or tablet. It has 4 sensors and 7 channels of data that help us sense the activity in your brain and sort of tell you what it means. So the first application we created is something called Calm, which is, you'll see the screenshots there. And basically, it leads you through an exercise designed to help you calm and settle your mind. And it gives you feedback while you're doing that about how calm you are. And it gives you feedback in the sound of the form of winds. So when your mind is calm, you'll hear calm and settled winds. When your mind starts to wander away from the exercise, then you hear the winds pick up and it starts to get stormy. With that in mind, the next thing I'll do is I'll just show you the quick video that shows you the UX process we went through, kind of the stuff that we did. So just Alt-Tab. Yeah, there we go.
At Interaxon, we make brain-sensing technologies that help people be healthier, happier, and more connected in their daily lives. That's why we created Muse, the brain-sensing headband, which trains you to calm and settle your mind. Hailed by VentureBeat as the most important wearable of 2014, our human-centered design strategy targeted 3 main problems: help people understand the technology, teach people to fit their headband and get good signal, create an engaging and rewarding user experience. First, we had to help people understand the technology. People don't even know this technology is possible or understand their mind as a thing that can be measured. We needed to help them construct a mental model which represented their brain, their mind, an algorithm providing audio feedback, the brain-sensing headbands, and how these parts can interact to improve their life. We identified a metaphor as the best way to understand the system using simple, familiar principles. To find the right metaphor, we facilitated affinity diagram and brainwriting exercises. We conducted charrettes to explore how each metaphor would map to the system, and eventually landed on the concept of weather, with calm wind representing a calm mind, and turbulent winds representing an active mind. When asked, almost 100% of our participants described the metaphor as matching the product experience, using words like natural, appropriate, and effective. The second problem we faced lay in teaching users how to fit their headband and get good signal. The Muse headband is a very sensitive instrument. Muscle noise, makeup, hair, or even eye movements can interrupt the signal. To solve this, we built wireframes and low-fidelity prototypes of the session flow. Every 2 weeks, we ran lean UX sprints with 6 professionally recruited users in our target psychographics. With each iteration, we used the data to craft language that mirrors users' natural understanding of the system, Design a real-time indicator tuned to maximize signal quality while minimizing frustration. And develop a tutorial that turns novice users into competent EEG technicians capable of administering neurofeedback without even realizing it. The resulting flow allowed more than 90% of users to get good signal with no assistance on their first try. This meant we could finally begin creating an engaging and rewarding user experience which fits into daily life. In parallel with our sprints, we sent the product home with participants for weeks at a time to help us design, test, and implement gamification and data visualization elements to increase motivation. A year later, we've analyzed UX data from 134 participants, engaging with 62 product iterations in 21 user studies. We've just started shipping and are thrilled with the positive response from journalists and our first users.
It was calming, simple, and easy to use.
You've done a good job of making things emotional rather than overly cerebral.
Muse is the first consumer-ready brain sensing technology that's usable, easy to understand, rewarding, and makes people healthier, happier, and more connected.
So that's what we've been working on for the last couple of years. 1 second. And the team that's doing it is a really diverse group. So there's about 45 of us now in Toronto. Just 4 of us on the product team, but we're holding strong. And among us, we've got neuroscientists, engineers, developers, all that sort. But also at the same time, it's a group of people who's really diverse in their personal interests doing stuff. And the one member of our team who's really made the biggest difference in terms of UX is Jay here, who's I'm going to introduce next. He's our senior UX researcher, and he'll tell you a bit about what we've learned over the course of the year, some of the exercises we developed, and how it's helped us get there. So this is Jay.
All right, thanks, Trev. So basically, the user experience side of this thing is kind of complicated because I spent some time doing some consulting for big firms and that sort of thing. I also spent some time as an academic, but here was an opportunity to create an entirely new product category, which is super exciting, but also you can't really lean on the basics, right? So where we start with something like this, it's a research version of the headband, and we try to move it to a product like this, which is something refined that people understand. So you heard in that video about the processes we use, but when I think about talking to a room at the UX Awards where I can probably learn a lot more from you guys than you can learn about me, I thought this new product category might be something a lot of you haven't experienced as much as other things. So I wanted to share a little bit of the improvised methods we came up with to do this on a low startup budget. So for example, one of the first things is, you can see here Google Docs. This is what we call a copy party, and we affectionately refer to it as a party because it's horribly painful and that at least motivates us to go. Now, as you heard in the video, language is such a key part here. Like we can talk about screen designs and all that stuff, but one of the hardest things is what is the language we use to explain, for example, as you see on the screen, that someone's brain is going to be reflected by wind. So we started to set up these collaborative Google Docs sessions where we would write 10, 20, 30, 40 different versions of every line of text in the application, and we would see and test and decide what we thought had the best chance, then go into our design sprints and test it. So you can see here, like, Muse plays sounds that reflect your brain signals. Muse lets you hear what's happening in your brain. Number 7 there, because you can't hear your brain signals, Muse translates them, et cetera, et cetera. So all kinds of different ideas which we got to test. So that's one idea when language is so important with the new product category. Another thing, earlier we heard a little bit about different metaphors. So the material metaphor in the Google presentation just before this. Also, if you saw the Volkswagen presentation earlier, I think his name was Adam, talked about selling a car with a dating site metaphor. So metaphor is such a critical part. Now, when you're doing an existing product category, we have things. We have files, folders. We have all these existing metaphors which we can build upon. But when we're creating our own metaphor, we need these design methods. So what you're seeing here, we adapted a brain writing method called pin cards, and we designed this card you see on the left, which in the middle has a central metaphor, and above and below has what are called entailments, which are corollary truths to that metaphor. So we set up a pin cards brain writing exercise. I think we went offsite for like 2 days with the whole strategic team to come up with as many different metaphors for brain sensing as possible. And that's how we ultimately landed on the weather metaphor, which the video mentioned has been extremely well received by our users. Another example, and this is something a lot of you probably have done, but setting up a UX lab in a startup with no budget is always a little bit fun, right? So you're looking here at an iMac, which is connected to an iMac in another room, where there's 2 webcams, a homemade sled that's duct taped to an iPhone thing, and we've got the iMac camera as well, and we've got paper covering it so the user doesn't know they're being observed, and we're sharing the desktop using Apple Roam. You know, so like when I was a consultant and I had a little bit more money, we had like Moray and all that kind of stuff, but this is the improvisational. I think we were streaming using like a podcast streamer to stream the, Nicecast, to stream the audio from one computer to another. So there's all these different concerns. Now, this is a slide I do not expect you to understand, but I love just throwing something like this on the screen. So this is our whole UX process, and this is kind of me trying to like get a handle upon the chaos that was starting to unfold. You can see surveys and inquiries and ethnography that we're trying to plan, but I want to focus on the left side here. Now, here's something interesting. We have a hardware product, okay? Now, UX, we know how to fight for user experience research, right? But when you have a hardware product, that means we have an R&D team. And we have an R&D team that's out there already getting brains. They're getting brains with headbands. They're measuring their signal processing. Now, what happens? Of course, the R&D team are brilliant. One of the co-founders, Chris, he's a brilliant guy. So when they go and they have people engage with this technology, they're doing the signal processing on the actual sensor data. But of course, they cannot resist, of course, interpreting the user experience data. But it's not a great sample. There's not a great methodology, and they're leading down the kind of biased path. So we had to really build some fences after making many mistakes by allowing that data to come through, build fences around the idea to say, and if you can see the arrow there, when UX research that is more formal derives a hypothesis around the DSP, which is the digital signal processor that figures out the sensor data, only then can we use internal data collection using the team members, using the brain. So for example, the hypothesis we had once was that there were unexpected jumps in the wind, that people thought they were calm, but the wind was jumping up, and that was kind of ruining the experience. So now we will allow internal research on having people identify that, even though the hypothesis was driven by true, well-sampled, unbiased users professionally recruited, we allow the internal brain data to fund the DSP signal processing analysis. So, you know, I did not, when I started this job, expect that I'm going to have to draw those kind of fences, but these kind of complex situations kept coming up. Now, I've given you something that I think, hopefully one of those 4 examples is something you can take home, because that's always what I'm looking for when I come to a presentation like this. But now's my chance to wax poetic a little bit on what it's like to kind of build a product category as a UX person in a new startup. This is an image that Trevor shared on my Facebook wall, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago? And take a second to take it in. If you're a user experience person, like, it makes sense, right? But when I saw it, there was kind of an emotional connection for me, because there's 2 levels to it, right? As a UX person, you look at that and you say, this is awesome, okay? If you just design first, you lay the asphalt, it may be a beautiful, comfortable looking path, but it might lead to the wrong place. It looks like everyone is going to the right, and what we can see is the tracks in the ground. It's a great case for user research. And in fact, let's take it a bit further. Let's go to Toledo, where the Department of Geography and Planning decided to build Centennial Hall, which is the building pictured here. And before they did it, they waited a winter, and they analyzed all the footprints in the snow. Some of you might not know what snow is, but we're from Canada, so we know. Analyzed all the footprints in the snow to determine where the students were walking, use that analysis the next summer to build the paths. So while it might not be aesthetic, it looks beautiful because, first of all, it's representing the humanity of the situation, where these isn't a perfect octagon or anything, but these are the paths that people really take. But the other reason it looks beautiful is no one's walking on the grass, right? The grass is perfectly kept because we've adapted to the users here. And this is important to me because this is the other level of what this feels like to build a product category, build a UX team at a startup. Every time I look at the product, and Trevor looks at the product, and our team looks at the product, there's a mixed 50-50 reaction. There's a huge amount of pride and incredible feeling at the experiences people are having, or there's like a horror and disdain at how slow it is and unresponsive, and how it doesn't look like Quora and Facebook and Google Now, and it's just not there yet, right? That's why there was an emotional connection to this image for me, because honestly, we've built something that in my eyes looks like that dirt road still. We haven't paved it yet. We haven't done the lamp posts. We haven't even got the asphalt out. But you can hire people to do that. We can do that now. The point in our product that brings the pride is that neighborhood you see on the right is somewhere no one has ever been before. We have built a dirt road, and we've broke new ground to a place that no one has ever really been before. And I'm going to use some quotes from our users on some of our reviews. We've just launched, but we've got really high ratings on Google Play, on the App Store, and Amazon, and we're extremely happy. And take a look at some of these quotes, because they just kind of warm our hearts and make us feel like all the sleepless nights were worth it. So here's a real user on the Amazon store. I felt a drastic improvement in the amount of anxiety I have. When I'm in situations where I'd previously lose control of my mind and lose focus, I'm now noticing my mind is able to cope with these challenges, and I'm starting to feel myself naturally keeping my composure. I use it every night before going to bed, and I have in fact noticed a difference. I sleep almost all night, whereas before I would be awake for hours and then doze off and wake right back up. Since I get more sleep, I'm not as tense and easily irritated during the day. So what it feels like to build that dirt road is what it feels like is breaking new ground. And I think as a user experience person, this lends to a much bigger imperative about what we do. We are phenomenologists. We focus on experience, which is a tool that can be used for many purposes. And one of the things that's driven me in the past 5 years in both this and my previous project has been to apply that to the more holistic sense of what experience means. What experience means when someone's not engaging with your product. I feel like in every organization, we have a responsibility to think holistically about that experience and make people's lives better, not just when they're shopping, not just when they're buying things, but making their lives better in general. And that's something that I think is very important about Muse. And again, it feels like, you know, some of these screens, it looks like one thing to you, but it looks like a very different thing to me because I have a lot of future plans, and Trevor and I are always dreaming about that. And there's a lot of places to go, but what I really wanted to tell you guys about is that first year experience of defining a new product category. So I really hope that's something new for some of you and you took something away from this, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Q&A?
Yeah, questions?
We have time for 2 or 3 questions, apparently. So if anyone has any.
Right now it's $2.99, and it's available at choosemuse.com. Oh, we didn't put that on there.
We didn't put that on there yet.
Our marketing people are very angry at us.
Yeah,
Choosemuse.com.
Yeah.
Anything else? Or?
Yeah, over here.
So I noticed you guys did a Indiegogo campaign. I was wondering if you could talk about the impetus for going the crowdsourcing direction and what the experience has been like since then.
Sure. So the first thing, I mean, the number one reason is obviously to raise money, which is, you know, great. But crowdfunding has another really important thing for startups, which is that in the early life of a startup, every dollar of sales, every customer you get is worth $10 in venture financing because it lets you go and raise money. You get to be able to say, look, we went out and people are interested in this. You're showing demand, you're showing traction early on. So if I was to give you a couple lessons I've learned from crowdfunding, one is stay in close contact with your people who funded you. So they'll be huge advocates for you later on, and that's something that I think we got around to a little bit late, and it might have, we could have done a lot better if we had stayed on top of that more. Also, be very careful what you promise at the beginning of your project. So I was actually 2 years from our crowdfunding campaign to when we delivered the project. It turns out that making a brain sensor is very difficult, but you got to be very careful because there's commitments that you make which lock you into things later on. So you got to be really careful. And I think as general crowdfunding advice, people think that a crowdfunding is a way to generate publicity, it's a way to get attention, but it's not. It's actually the conversion point. So you need to be building attention to drive people to you need to have a full marketing campaign in place before you reach start the crowdfunding thing.
Yeah, for the UX people in the room too, can you, based on what Trevor was saying about making promises, can you imagine the task came across your desk, say, oh, by the way, in our crowdfunding campaign, we promised everyone at a certain level that their name would be in the app. Oh, really? How many is it? Oh, how many was it, like?
1,700.
1,700 names. So they're all in the app, but yeah, it's a big scroll. Anyway.
Yes?
Can you share a little bit of your future plans now that you've gone past this?
Sure. Let's see. What can I share that we can talk about? So we're working on a big redesign of the app from the ground up. The app currently is developed using Unity because we need to do cross-platform stuff. So we're going to be doing it in native code for Android and iOS. We're also looking at ways to bring a lot more content into the app. So right now you get the exercise, but we're looking at ways we can bring a lot more information and tips. So we found people respond to the technology and the exercise, and they love doing it. But what they want is they feel like it's starting to make this change in their life, and they want to take that further. So we're finding ways to teach them more about just being a happier, healthier person and bring that into the app as well.
Yeah, like tying in the science, right? Because a lot of our design process was based on neuroscience and cognitive science and focused attention training, and that's something we knew that would make the product work. But it's interesting to see users are like, we want to see that science. We want to know what we're doing, and that's been a huge effort as well. We have time for one more question.
One more.
Right in front of you.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah. So the question was, how do you charge the device?
it charges by USB and it lasts 3 hours or so.
No, it lasts 5.
5
It takes
hours.
3 hours to charge, but it works in sessions, which range from 3 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So the way to think about it, if you're doing it once or twice a day, you know, it's weeks before you have to recharge it, and it doesn't get hot at all.
Can we do one more? Someone over there had a question as well.
Yeah.
So just do that.
The weather metaphor has a limited future in terms of the mental model for brain by I believe a equivalent to actual weather. Are you going to carry that metaphor forward?
Well, so this metaphor. Oh yeah. So the question was that the weather metaphor something we see continuing on to other applications, and will we keep it going? So, in my mind, the weather metaphor is very specifically about this particular application because the goal of it is to calm and settle your mind. And already, human beings, we already use this metaphor naturally in our language. So we talk about, I'm having I'm all clouds in my head, or I've got a sunny disposition, or I'm under the weather today. Like, we already use that. If we're doing, say, a sleep product or something like ADD training, we might use something that's a little different. So I think for us, it's really, that metaphor is tied to this product. And if we release other applications, we'll probably investigate other ones that are more appropriate for those things.
It's interesting to also note that one of the demands from our user base has been more environments. So right now, the first environment is you control the weather in a beach. So you're trying to make the beach so pleasant so you feel the way that beach feels, and it's an emotional engagement. And so people are like, I want to go to more places. So as opposed to people thinking on the UX level, like what other metaphors can we explore, they understand the weather, it makes sense in their life, and they want to do it in more places. To us, one of the most important things about the weather is a big success is when I hear someone who's not using the app think about calming the winds, right? Because the weather has made them think about their mind introspectively in a way they haven't before. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much for your time. We
Thanks,
appreciate
everyone.
it. Yeah.